Thanks.
Hi, Mary. Welcome to Cura Medicina.
Nice to be here.
So good to see you. Yeah, I'm really excited about this podcast because, well, for many reasons, because I love you and um, we shared a Bobansana diet more or less together, and it was a remote diet, but you went for your first, I believe, was your first in-person diet?
Yeah, first died in the jungle.
Awesome. So let's start at the beginning. Let's start um, you know, talk a little bit about how you were called to participate in the diet.
Yeah. You know, Bobansana really called to me, she was showing up in like Amanita ceremonies and it was really clear. And then had the good fortune to be able to do it. I thought I'd have to go to the jungle, but had the good fortune to do it here, do a social diet. And I had sat with Juan Carlos Taminchi in January of last year for the first time. And he grew up in the Pucallpa area and just felt really called to sit in ceremony with him in the jungle. And then when I dieted Bobansana, during the diet with Bobansana, actually, she showed me a way that I could diet in the jungle because there are some logistics that I needed to navigate. And she showed me how to do that so I could diet in the jungle. And then then those arrangements got to be made. And I mean, it's amazing, isn't it, that Bobansana shows me how I can go to the jungle. I mean, kind of makes sense, but yeah, I'm relatively to plants, but man, they really speak. And yeah, so that came to be, and there were a few other people going from my community, so we went together, and
Mm.
we had the choice of dieting tobacco or Bobansana or Chuchuhuasi. Yeah,
And which one did you pick?
Chuchuhuasi.
Choo Choo. Amazing.
Don't you just love the name Choo Choo?
Yeah, Choo Choo. Yeah, it's a great name.
Yeah,
Before we get into the plant, let's talk a little bit about the where in Peru and how did you get there and what that was like, and yeah,
yeah.
just give people a feel, like, who haven't been to the jungle, give them a feel of what it's, what that trip is like. Yeah.
Yeah. Just planning the whole logistics is, as soon as you commit to dieting something or going into ceremony, that's when the plants start working with you. And I'd not been to South America before. And so, um, flew to Lima via LA and I guess all the flights are overnight flights into Lima. So it's an overnight flight, and it's pretty cool just in the airport, in LA when you're getting ready to fly to Lima in the waiting area. It's so cool just to be a minority. Like I think there's maybe one other Caucasian person there. And I guess Lima Airport is a takeoff point for a lot of places in South America, a lot of countries. And flew to Lima overnight, and then had like a 4-hour layover, and then flew to. And you know how you are when you're sleep deprived and you're in another country. And I don't know Spanish, and I'm learning now though. And then flew to Pucallpa, and Pucallpa is kind of like the last place on entering into the Amazon jungle. And from there, you have to take either very small planes or boats. And Pucallpa's on the Ucayali River. And we spent a couple days acclimating in Pucallpa, and that was an experience. And then we then the whole group, there were 8 of us who dieted, and then the whole group met at the airport in Pucallpa, and we took a private plane to Cantamana, and that was pretty short flight, maybe half hour, 40 minutes. And it was just so fun being in that plane with everybody because we're all so excited. And some people have been there before, and some of us have been to the jungle, but not that jungle, not that area of the jungle. And then we took, the little motor taxi, the little motorcycle with like the little seat in the back, and
Tuk tuk.
tuk tuk. Yeah. Took the tuk tuk to uh Intiyaku, and that's the property that Juan Carlos Taminchi has um has purchased and is nurturing and for ceremonies for dietas. He's not always located there, but um and then we arrived there, and his mother and his father run the property, and yeah, and by then you're kind of just in the daze, different culture, sleep deprived, and different food and
Mm,
excitement, and then we all met for the evening and shared a dinner together made by Juan Carlos's mother, and
beautiful.
yeah, and then we
So it's
were
not just to it's 9 hours to Lima from LA ish.
yeah, it's about 9
Yeah.
now.
And
Mhm.
then another, I guess, hour to Pucallpa.
Yeah, about an hour,
Okay.
little hour. Mhm.
So it's quite a trip to get into the jungle.
It is quite a trip, yeah, and even like had to drive 3 hours to the airport where I flew to LA, and uh, yeah, it's quite a trip, and you've definitely left your environment as soon as and what's comfortable and what's known as soon as you get into the waiting area to go to Lima, yeah, and then you get further and further in, and yeah.
Beautiful. So you arrive, you get there, and then at what point did you decide to diet Chuluwasi?
I felt I was feeling Chuchuhuasi, but I was also feeling
Chuchuhuasi.
malted tobacco. And you and I share an affection for tobacco. And
Yeah, we have a hape love.
and I just kind of kept checking in, and then I got this message from tobacco, not now, later. Not now, later. And then that left Chuchuhuasi. Yeah.
Hmm,
Yeah.
beautiful. And can you describe a little bit of the characteristics of Chuchuwasi?
Yeah. I think the thing that struck me about Chuchuhuasi, there's like a list of things, and they seem like they're mostly kind of like physical healing, like it's good for your bones and good for like rheumatism kind of things. And none of those things were what I was seeking help for, but also help with clearing your energy field. And that was what called to me. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So what does the beginning of the diet look like? I assume you did some cleansing or
A
something like that.
tobacco purge. And
Yeah, tell me about that. You drink the tobacco?
yeah, and I have to tell you, I had some apprehension about it, but after being served hapai by you in ceremony, I was like, I was like, I think I'm ready for a tobacco purge. And kind of done this already a little bit, and yeah, so we all sat in the Maloka, and the Maloka was big. It's a new Maloka. It's beautiful, and we started off with the tea, with the tobacco tea, and the whole time we're hydrating with water, and Juan Carlos would come around and refill our water cup, and tobacco tea, which was pretty intense. You couldn't drink it too quickly. And then people start purging at various times. And then after that, had a tobacco paste and styrie, I think is what it's called. And it's like ambiel, but it's without the grass that they usually have in ambiel. So there's no minerals, because with the diet, or no salt, no minerals, and then we had that. We had a couple servings of that, and Juan Carlos is singing in between, and and then and then we had a hape serving, and this was over maybe 3 or 4 hours. It was a long process, and and I didn't purge through the process, and then Juan Carlos came over to serve hape, and I looked at how much he put in his hand. I'm like, oh, it's a Derek size serving cup. Like, I know what's gonna happen now. And sure enough. Yeah,
Beautiful.
and you just feel saturated with tobacco. I've not felt that before. You could just feel it building and building. And one thing that was really interesting is I think it was kind of around, when I purged, Bobansana showed up really big. I could feel her. You know how you feel her in the diet really strong, and then, just kind of feel her intermittently now and then, as time
Mm,
goes on. But man, she showed up really big in that tobacco purge. Yeah.
beautiful. So you
Yeah.
drink the tea, you drink a little tea, get kind of introduced to tobacco, and then you drink, I guess it's like a big gulp of the paste.
It's it
Um,
it's like Ambil, you put
oh,
it
so
in.
you put it in your cheek. Okay,
Yeah,
interesting. So
and
you put it in your cheek, and then he gives you the hape and tops
yeah,
you off.
yeah, and over again, like 4 hours, so you're just pretty intense physically, so you're drinking the water, and that's gonna help with the purge process and meditating and being with the process, yeah. Yeah, and that's
Beautiful.
your introduction to the diet.
All right,
And
what's next?
and what too is, we had a social night that night, but then once we had the tobacco purge in the morning, there was no communicating anymore with one another. There was no sharing of intentions like we generally do. You're just foomp, you're just in the dieta process, instructed to not look at people, keep your energy within, and and other things like, to be careful about not being out in the broad daylight because the plants don't like the broad daylight. And sure enough,
Mm,
I mean, it's the jungle and it's, hot in the middle of the day, but you could just feel that they just didn't like that to be out, but they liked the early morning and the evening and really liked the night. And just little things like, no distractions, no reading. You can listen to music on your phone, and but ceremonial kind of music, and little things like not cutting your fingernails or your hair during the dieta. And yeah, yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
So the Chuchuhuasi, it's like a bush, right? From what I
I,
know.
I guess it's a big, big tree. Big,
Oh, it's
big,
a tree.
yeah,
Okay.
tree, yeah. And after the tobacco purge, we all had our own cabana, and mine was about 12 feet by 12 feet and was right next to the jungle, and it has everything you need in it. It's very small, very modest, has a bed. In Peru, they have these ubiquitous rocking chairs that are made out of shaped, oh, what's that metal they use to reinforce rebar? It looks like rebar that's shaped, and there's this lanyard kind of weaving, so like the air moves through it. So I had a bed and that rocking chair and a hammock and a little side table and a little water jug. And mine it's open, but it's screened. But two of my corners they were fully screened from the ceiling to the floor, and it's just the jungle was just right there. It was just right next, and the other side opened to an area, where people are walking in the Maloka, but you could just orient yourself so you're just right at the looking at the jungle. And so after the dieta, Juan Carlos opened the tobacco ceremony for people there in the Maloka, but the rest of us, he came to our cabana and opened the process there, and brought, like a bottle of Chuchuhuasi tea, and sang and blessed it and blew mapacho and chanted, and like, had me say my name into the mapacho, and then and he's shorter than me, and he sits on the ground and kind of, like, crosses his legs, and you can just feel the devotion coming from him anytime he's engaged with the plants, but especially, when it's something really formal like that, and it's just so reverential, just the whole process,
Mm.
and then, yeah, and then we had the bottle of tea. The instructions were to have a little cup of it, um, with breakfast and with lunch. We had 2 meals a day, and then before going to bed. And then yeah, and then, to sit with the tea, bless it. We got little mapacho, wrapped mapacho to bless and to, meditate on our intentions and connection with Chuchuhuasi. Yeah, yeah,
Amazing. And so you're drinking the tea 3 times a day,
yeah.
praying and connecting with the plant. Can you tell us a little bit about what she said to you and like what that process was like? Like you're just getting into the diet and you're getting to know her, and
Yeah.
did she come on super strong and then or was it slow? Was it like a slow dance?
I know, it's so interesting, and by the way, Chuchuhuasi feels sorta like a he to me,
Okay.
but,
Okay. I was wondering that.
kind of a he, like, in a very balanced yin-yang kind of way, and, a very soft, like a soft he, and, we had 3 ayahuasca ceremonies, and the first ayahuasca ceremony was when I really, really felt Chuchuhuasi, and one our ceremonies, by the way, they started at 6 and finished about 4 or 5 in the morning, so they were very I know, they were, like, very, very long ceremonies, and, almost the entire time, Juan Carlos is going from person to person singing to them, and, he would say he's just channeling the plants, and when he would come to me in ceremony, it was always with impeccable timing. It was just, like, right when it was needed, and the first ceremony is when I really felt Chuchuhuasi, and Juan Carlos is singing different songs and using different instruments and different intonations with each person. I mean, it's just amazing to witness. And again, he comes and sits at the edge of your mat, and the Molca floor is concrete, and he's just sitting on the concrete floor for a long time, could be 20 minutes, 30 minutes, up to an hour that he's singing to you. And I could really feel Chuchuhuasi come, and it was like Juan Carlos, his singing, it was like he was the officiant, and I could feel Chuchuhuasi coming towards me, and then the word that came to me was betrothed, that we were now betrothed, and
Mm.
there was, like, this celebration, this celebratory kind of, feeling and experience of that. Yeah, so that was really beautiful because, it can be really subtle, right? But man, you just see things. I mean, you just have this experience and you're like, "Oh, like wonderful. This is real. This is really happening." This this hosting and working together with this plant. Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolute magic. Of course, my rational brain sometimes questions everything, and
Yeah.
then I'll get a really deep feeling or
Yeah.
connection, and it's such a beautiful dance between our rational selves, which are is so used to questioning this
Yeah.
world,
Yeah.
and our trusting selves that
Yeah.
is walking this path and like doing the work and doing the dietas and I'm sure you feel like with every dieta that you do, the rational brain gets quieter and
Yeah.
quieter and
Yeah.
quieter.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. In our Western world, it thinks it's the boss and it has to give up, to listen, able to be really listening and really connect, that rational brain needs to take a back seat. Yeah.
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 Hooray for that. How
Yeah.
many days in was the first ceremony once you started the diet?
I think it was I think it was 2 days in. It was the 2nd day that we had our first ceremony. And I think, Juan Carlos said it was and the intention of that first ceremony was just to do like a formal introduction, to like really solidify that union of sorts. Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay,
Yeah.
so you go back to your combo and just back to the, drinking 3 times a day and
Yeah.
praying. Yeah.
And I just loved that. I love to be able to just dedicate, to not have any distractions, just be present and to be quiet. And Chuchuhuasi really liked to work with me at night. And so I got to give up my sleeping schedule, which I cherish, my 8 hours of sleep a night. And I was like, okay, Chuchuhuasi. Sometimes I'd say, okay, Chuchuhuasi, you can have me, but like, let me just get a little bit of sleep first. And then I might go to sleep at 8 and might wake up at midnight. But I just lost my normal sleep schedule, which is sleep when I could and and then wake up and the jungle is such a interesting experience at night because you feel it really come alive and it's
Mm,
like plants really come alive and that just seemed when they are really active. And so yeah, waking up and Chuchuhuasi, like the instructions were the meditation that I sort of did was one that I learned when I used to do Buddhist practice. And the name that they used for that was choiceless awareness, when you're just resting in what comes to you, not following trains of thought. And, and that there was the invitation to really, really be in that space as much as possible. Yeah.
mm.
Yeah.
And what about dreams?
Yeah, I had definitely had some dreams. And some oftentimes they were cryptic, I'd understand part of it and then some of them like I just reread my journal for the first time, before meeting with you this morning and it was so
Mm.
wonderful to visit it, because it was enough time has passed. It's been a little over a month since I got back, maybe about 6 weeks. And so, like, things that I had totally forgotten and dreams that I wrote down and realized that there's not a complete understanding of it. And like one thing I got from this dieta is that it's going to play out for a long time. Certain things were revealed, but that it will continue to play out. Yeah.
Is there a particular dream you want to share with us that you feel was,
What
alive?
You know, there might be like a particular ceremony more so
Mm.
than that that
Yeah.
might. Shall I do that? Do you want to hear
Yeah,
about?
sure. However you want.
So my intention, I had this list of of intent, and I realized it like all came down to like to just really know myself, to just really understand myself, on all levels, not just
Mm.
this level. And there was one ceremony in particular, so we had 3 ceremonies, and I think this was the 2nd ceremony, and, partway through the ceremony and the other thing to mention is, I noticed the ceremonies, they were very different than other ceremonies here. It was like my body felt different, the process was different, and the beginning of the ceremonies were always very, very, very challenging and very uncomfortable, and, um in a lot of ceremonies, I'll have direct conversations with Madre. That didn't really happen in this ceremony. It was a different kind of connection. And I asked like Chuchuhuasi once. Well, first I realized that Madre is providing the playground and the garden for the ceremony, but Chuchuhuasi is directing everything that happens and everything that shows up and all that. And Chuchuhuasi, the discomfort I felt, Chuchuhuasi said like that was Chuchuhuasi's way of having me purge. And it was just this energetic discomfort. And Chuchuhuasi, when I asked Chuchuhuasi, like, what is this? And at one point I'm like, oh my God, why did I do this? I'm never doing this again. And you have those ceremonies every once in a while there, and I haven't had one like that, but it was really challenging. It's like, oh, and Chuchuhuasi said, this is my way of having you purge. And it was like respiring like a tree does through the leaves. And that was
Mm.
the purging process of Chuchuhuasi. And in this one ceremony, a person next to me is going through a very powerful process and was being sung to by Juan Carlos, and it was very long. And the sense I had is that was power and protection was going on for this person. I don't know if that was accurate, but that was just the sense that I had. And there was this like sloughing off, like in this little tablet form of this person's process, like this little chiclet box size of like power and protection that showed up just like off to the side. And and this clown in a suit showed up to me and said, like, would you like that? And it was this clown that had like white hair and kind of a white face, kind of skinny, and like this suit that they might have gotten from Salvation Army or something, and from like the 60s. And and I looked at it and I thought, "Oh, well, it's just cast off. I don't think there's any problem with me having that. I'd like a little bit of power and protection." And so I said, "Sure." And I thought about it. I thought, I don't think there's any problem with me having that." And I picked it up, and whoa, I like sort of paid for it right away. It was like this really big process, uncomfortable process that happened with me. And I was looking at that. I was looking at what happened. And then I realized there were a lot of things that played out, but at its essence, saw where I lacked integrity. Like I
Mm.
was wanting something for free from somebody else's hard work. And I just, Bobansana introduced me to seeing a lot of my shadow. But man, this is really kind of cut deep to see where I lacked this integrity. And then right then, Ron Carlos showed up to start singing to me, to channeling the plants. And I really enjoyed the birds in the Amazon, and I had the Merlin app so I could identify the sounds because you can't see them. They're so high up. And whenever Juan Carlos would come and do his check-in, we would talk about what bird songs that I'd heard. And and then I mean, just knows how to work with everybody. So whenever he would start that kind of healing process or channeling process or connection process, he always sang by whistling these bird songs with me. And it would just like open my heart. And then you're open, and then foof, this big process happens. And when he's singing with you, you're just invited to be really present. And it's not an easy process to be present to because there's a lot of energetic stuff that's happening, a lot of openings and clearings and scenes and uh and what I saw with what happened with that integrity is I could see how like my energetic field, it was almost like, we come into the world with an intact energetic field, and it had it had been damaged when I was like 3 years old. And that if the integrity of your energetic field is damaged, so this is just what came to me, this isn't, and it's like there's no way you can have full integrity if your field isn't totally intact. And you've seen me in ceremony. There's a lot of things that have been coming up, from, you know, pretty unhealthy childhood. And so I could just see this culmination I could see like where there was still this little dent in this energetic field as he was working with me. And I could just feel this culmination of of this energetic field. And it's like it washed through all my chakras coming up, the ground up. And so I could just see things coming in place. And like as that came in place, like came, power was really felt. And then it felt like that's that is the essence of what Chuchuhuasi showed me and helped heal, but, like, that was just the beginning. Now I get to learn what that's about, and integrity, I looked up integrity when I got home, and integrity, the Latin root means complete or whole, but at its essence, it means untouched. And so, like, integrity just being, like, how I, carry myself throughout the world, and, like, I had realized going into the ceremony for a while now, a little bit of victim mentality about things, and, like, that's not coming from a place of integrity, from victim mentality or insecurity, that's not coming from a place of integrity, judgment, that's not coming from a place of integrity. So throughout the rest of the ceremony, I kept getting tested. And that clown figure then became like a voice. And I thought it was Madre's voice at first, but it wasn't. And then I just got quicker and quicker. It's like, I see you. There are these little temptations, these little things that were tossed out at me. And so I felt like just this big, big lesson about integrity that I'm still really learning. Yeah.
It sounds to me like you got a big dose of the what we call the trickster, right?
It
The
was the
clown, the
Trickster.
trickster came in, which the trickster is, can give us such beautiful lessons, but it does it in a way that, woo,
Yeah.
it's something to behold. And I just wanted to call out what you said. It was so beautiful that we have this energy field, and if that energy field is damaged when we're young, which most of us, I would say it happens, happened to me,
Mhm,
that, we always think about our physical bodies or our psychology as being the thing that needs to be healed.
mm,
I need to address this behavior
mm,
that is response to my trauma. And we never really are. This is the first time I've heard someone talk to the energy field also needs a healing.
mm,
So thank you for bringing that. That's such a beautiful lesson,
mm.
and especially in today's world of, trauma talk and all of that, it's so refreshing to hear you talk about what a lot of people call the subtle body, right?
Mm,
The energy field, the subtle body,
mhm,
which is as important to heal
mhm,
as
mhm,
the psychology and the physical
mhm.
body and all that. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right on because I could see that all the work that you're doing, like, out there, like, if that energetic body isn't healed, you know, it's in my experience, it's helpful, but man, going to have that energetic body restored basically is, what it felt like, yeah.
Yeah, back within, the word integrity, as you said, is means
Yeah,
wholeness. So restoring it back to a place of wholeness is,
yeah,
yeah, I love that. I never really thought about integrity as being wholeness. But when you think about it, when I think of somebody that's integrity, I feel there's no division in
yes,
them. They're
yeah,
they speak the truth, they speak
yeah,
their truth without trying to be something or pretend something.
yeah.
it feels very whole,
You
like you
can feel
said.
it. Yeah, you
Yeah,
can feel it. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
beautiful.
But yeah, that trick character, like, in the very beginning, like, I couldn't see a clown dressed in a suit, like, how obvious is that?
So good. The trickster.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody else recently that had a clown visit them.
Really?
Yeah, so yeah, clown trickster energies strong these days. Maybe Sagittarius, new moon, and all that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, your recording stopped.
Oh, did it?
Uh, Mary streaming
Oh,
has
thi
stopped due to incoming call. Oh, I think you're back though.
okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I turned that off, sorry about that. Okay, we're back.
No worries. Yeah.
Yeah, I might have missed something
Okay.
said.
Y- yeah. So yeah, what's next? Like, so ceremonies. Let's talk a little bit about towards the end of the diet. You did what, 12 days of diet? Was
It
that
was 10 days.
10 days? So
Yeah,
maybe say a little bit about towards, what it was like after working
yeah.
with it. And yeah.
Yeah, um, maybe one other thing I'd like to mention
Yeah.
is,
It's whatever you want.
Yemanja, the sculpture that I had?
Imanja, of course. She's
Yeah,
right here.
and oh, look, you have Yemanja too.
Oh yeah. She's
Oh, that
very close to
first
my heart.
she came to Peru via Brazil, right? Because she's
Yes.
originally from Africa and, like, moved through.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. She showed up in ceremony, and she, gave me the invitation to help heal the left hand, and
Mm.
she became animate and was holding out her left hand, and I'm still seeing what that's about, but as I understand from what other people have said, that has to do with the feminine and compassion as well,
Mhm.
and so that's really playing out for me, and so much of this, like, I was given so much that just feels so big that, there's just this continual working with it, and when I came back for the next month, I mean, ceremony was still in their plants were still really active, in my dreams all day long, sitting twice a day and just felt this deepened devotion to the plants.
Mm.
And, I mean, it's just like what they call forth from you, what they offer you, and you're just so grateful for it. And, just wanting to reciprocate. And part of the message to reciprocate was just continue with that dedication and devotion to them. And probably like one thing to mention is, you've been in ceremonies where I've been in, and they're just a lot of my ceremonies have just been so much purging, so much really intense purging, and in a way that takes up a lot of space in the ceremony room, and that feels like energy that I haven't been able to contain. And in the I just sat, a couple weekends ago, and it was the first ceremony where I could be with, and, like, the image that comes to me about Chuchuhuasi oftentimes is the trunk, and I could feel the integrity in my chest. I could just feel after that one ceremony, I could just call on that energy and integrity, and just the sense is a tree trunk, and so I was able to sit my first ceremony, and it was very, very intense, but I was able to contain the intensity, and not in a controlled way, but in a way that sort of expanded and created new energetic networks, if you will. So it, and that was one of my intentions, was to be able to sit more quietly and intensely with the medicine. And the medicine now, this started a little bit before Peru, but has continued. Like, the way she has me purged now is totally energetically, just very intense. Like, it would actually feel easier to purge in, the more common way, but she has me purging energetically. And there's a particular dynamic in my life that has been very, 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 very challenging. And it's played out, there's been progress through it, but I've been able to approach it, like, some things clicked for me about this dynamic, and I just keep checking in with the plants, and, the ancestors show up for me a lot in
Mhm.
ceremonies, and they showed up in Peru in a big way, and, so I just am able I feel like I can just put this intention out, put a question out, and they'll show me like the next step. And then I'll do the next step. And then they'll show me the next step. And so that daily connection, even when I'm not just sitting here through life, is like it's undeniably present and has deepened. And that's so appreciative of that.
Yeah, it's one of the things I've had to also learn to do is ask,
Yeah.
ask for help from ancestors, from my guides, from the divine, right? Just
Yeah.
I'm in this mythic body course with
Uh,
Josh from the Emerald. And one of the things that he said in a recent episode, he talks a lot about in our course is, offering up those things in ourselves that don't serve us. For me, it was grief,
mm,
to offer the grief up to
mm,
the divine,
mm,
right? And for me,
yeah.
it's like my connection to Ganesh. So like offering my grief up to Ganesh.
Mm,
And it's so liberating. It's
mm,
so freeing, right?
uh,
And we don't have to carry it.
yeah.
That's why they're gods, right? They're gods, they're spirits,
Yeah.
because they can they can actually they can handle it, right? they're
Yeah.
they're in
Yeah.
this in these realms
Yeah.
because they've been through all of those things. And for me, that was a huge shift in my life.
Mm,
And so it's beautiful to hear you say that, and it's a great reminder for all of us, especially for our ancestors, right? to
mm,
to talk to our ancestors and thank them and give gratitude, and
mm,
offer fruit and flowers or whatever your practice is. But
mm.
it's, for me, it's a daily practice of just honoring.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like what you said about the divine because, it feels like the divine has so many ways of showing itself and connecting with you. And I understand, of course, there's ways to do it. Well, Ganesh, there's different traditions and ways of doing it. And I feel so appreciative to have found plant medicine. For me, that's a way of connecting with the
A-
divine reciprocity, that gratitude and reverence and asking and yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about the end of the diet. What was that like?
It was, uh it was sad. It was a little sad.
Yeah. Always for me too. I'm
Yeah,
always like, "No."
I know. It was a little sad, and then also, there was you had your choice of 10 or 20-day dieta, but if it was your first time, you could only do 10 days, and it was both sad and it was both like, "Oh gosh, thank goodness," because it's not easy, the diet to the limitation, and not having salt really affects your body and your energy, like I thought I'd be walking through the jungle, but man, I could stand and stroll a little bit to lift my binoculars up to try to see the birds, but I was feeling pretty worn out. And, 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 and yeah, we had a last ceremony and that was really profound. It felt like a lot of things came together in that ceremony and it felt like I was able to be with the plant medicine sort of in a different realm than I'd been before, like, not so much the personal realm, more like in the plant realm, and, um, and yeah, and it was, the only thing I was not sad about was, man, the no-see-ums really liked me, and I seemed to have a really strong reaction to the no-see-ums that other people didn't have, and so, uh yeah, and it felt like there was just like a big question mark, like you've been through this big process, it's going to continue and you don't know what it is, but there's like a trust, that gets established and like, okay, well, here we go, here we go, taking, this, what they call, this taking it into the ceremony of life.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah,
beautiful,
yeah.
beautiful. And I hear you guys took the boat out, which was quite a journey.
You I was Oh, you heard about
I
that.
heard about that, yeah.
Worse than the no-see-ums. It was like, yeah, it was a night boat, and
Yeah,
it's like their buses, right? They go up the river because 'cause we're going up the river back to Pucallpa, and they stop periodically and pick up people, and we were so excited about it, but I swear they is really loud, and they make these seats, I swear they are designed to, like, make it impossible to get comfortable. I tried every single contortion on those seats. Maybe if you're a kid and you're more flexible, but oh my gosh, it was but talk about surrender. And you're just fresh. We just had ceremony the night before, is that right?
yeah.
No, no, 2 nights before. But you're super sensitive from being quiet in the jungle, and then you're on this loud, really uncomfortable boat, but the cool thing is, like, the funnest thing to do is stick your head out the window, and they always have a searchlight going back and forth across the river, to navigate, all the fallen trees and things like that, and a lot of skill of that boat driver to get us up the river. Yeah, you heard.
I heard, yeah. So moral of the story, take the plane in and out next time.
I plan to go back, and I am definitely gonna check out that option because we paid for that for a couple of days recovering from that. Yeah. Yeah, Lord.
Yeah, on I go down to the jungle in Brazil, and it always depends on the river, right? The river can be really high, and
Yeah.
then it's like a 4-hour boat ride. But we went one time in I think it's the summer, yeah, and the river was so low that I was one of I think there were 4 men and some women, and every 15 minutes, I had to get out of the boat and lift the boat over logs. I had to lift it out of the sand, and it took 9 hours,
Oh,
and the whole time I was in and out of the water doing that. That for me was like, yeah, I'll never forget that boat ride. Just excruciating. Yeah.
that sounds makes my boat ride sound.
Yeah. Yeah, boat rides in the jungle are always, an adventure, we could say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. Is there anything else you wanna say about your trip or, tell everyone?
Well, I really appreciate this invitation because,
Mm,
it helps taking time to look at the journal, connecting with you. I've connected with you in amazing ways in ceremony, so it's nice to be able to talk about my experience with somebody who I know can really receive and hear it, and it brings
yeah,
beauty of that experience in me, so I really, really appreciate that,
yeah.
and it helps me, re-enliven my commitment, to
Mm,
and
mm,
I think the one takeaway might be just how different it was just so wonderful to be with the medicine in homeland, it's just so that to be with it where it grows and, where it lives and it thrives and, um, yeah, that was really found and beautiful, and yeah, yeah, just filled with gratitude right now for
mm.
this and remembering everything, and yeah.
Yeah, I second that too, and for me, of course, the medicine is such a beautiful part of this journey, right? The plants, it's all about, for me, the plants. But when you go to the Amazon, and you go to, usually we go for ceremony. I mean, if I'm going to the Amazon, I want to be in ceremony. And when I've been in the jungle, the ceremonies are great, but I also realize it's just the jungle
It's
that
the
is the healer. It's
it is.
the it's the whole, it's the plants also, but you get as much healing from the plants that you're not ingesting as you do from the plants that you're ingesting, something like that.
Oh god, I could feel
Yeah.
that at night, to just feel the jungle and the sounds and just energetic. Oh, right. It really is the whole jungle that you're connecting with.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I look forward to our next ceremony together or whenever
Eh,
we see each other.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
you going surfing today?
I'm not. I'm actually going to go to yoga right after this, and
Okay.
there's no surf. I surfed yesterday.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you
Yeah.
so much, Mary, for this connection and sharing your wisdom and your heart. And yeah, just an honor to spend this time and hear about your diet. And if anybody out there is thinking about doing a dieta, we both totally recommend it.
Totally.
And start with a remote diet. It can be just as powerful as
Sure.
in the jungle diet. And yeah, I'm just so honored to be on this journey with you and connected to the plants and learn from you. And yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Derek. Thank you.
Yay!
Fun.